Hello, Akira here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing another playthrough like my 0 speed base and growth FE8 run. This time though, it's going to be a different stat and game. So may I present FE7, but everyone has 0 base strength / magic and 0% growth. In addition to damage output already being much lower, due to having no unit attack stat, FE7 is a weird game for this challenge. Just thinking about the gameplay, it is really long, comes before the convenience from most of the games from FE8 onward, where you can basically just buy things as you need them. Only features double effective weaponry compared to most games 3 times, and is notorious for having bosses that have both high defense and res. I really don't like FE7, with it being one of the 2 FE games I played thus far that I put into my maybe there is a bad FE game tier of my personal Fire Emblem tier list. Still, FE8 with 0 strength / magic has already been done by Excelblum. As a result, we're going to start by first asking, can you beat FE7 Lyn Mode with 0 strength / magic base and growth? Starting with Lyn Mode makes our lives much simpler. Firstly, and most obviously, it's much shorter than Eliwood and Hector modes due to the lower number of chapters, and the fact that it's meant to be tutorial. This means the run will be shorter, and therefore less work for me when it comes to producing this video, and we won't have to worry as much about conserving weapon durability. Then secondly, we just know for the fact that for the most part, everyone is going to have 0 strength or magic. Only a singular Night Crest user will be able to promote late into Lyn Mode. The only energy drop is in chapter 10, and the Aethers drops are obtained much later into the game. Lyn Mode doesn't allow for the building supports either, so plus attack supports are off the table as a potential source of damage, and in turn spamming frustration. Speaking of frustration, if I continue this run into the game proper, I will use this file for an Iron Man. This means I'm not going to bring Nils to level 7, as Kalinka Shuna in 19X is unreliable at the best of times. Before we start though, an exercise for you, the viewer. If you feel like it, try tiering the Lyn Mode units based on how you think they'll do in this setting. I will share my personal thoughts during the conclusion of this video. Anyway, that's enough preamble, so let's get into the run. In the prologue, a girl from the plains of this 0 strength Lyn Mode run, we are joined by Lyn, who has 0 strength. This means she has a grand total of 5 attack, all from the might of her iron sword. While I'd like to make the joke that this means that she's exactly the same unit as usual, this is unfortunately not true. Her having 0 instead of 4 base strength has a big impact on her combat. We have only 40 uses to kill Bat the Beast, to whom she does 1 damage per hit when factoring in Throne's defense bonus. She only deals any damage to him at all due to the damage boost from having weapon triangle advantage against him. Additionally, the Throne heals him for 2 HP per turn, so in order to work him down, Lyn has to attack each turn on both phases, and thus put herself at risk of death from getting hit by 2 consecutive 35 to 40s. Sadly, she does not get any 1% or 2% crits, and her Iron Sword breaks while he is on low HP, leaving us with no way of clearing the map. This is not encouraging. Due to the way that GBA RN works with arrow wiggling, it would be theoretically possible to clear this map without further editing the ROM by rigging crits. However, I am impatient, and cannot be bothered to run the RN script, so I just make all iron weapons and basic tomes unbreakable to save myself from sanity. You can call it cheating if you want, to which I say, if you want to do it legit, be my guest. Now that we have our infinite durability iron sword, the next attempt does happen very eventually without having to rig anything. This process takes 18 turns, reflecting how much worse our combat is in this setting. In Chapter 1, Footsteps of Fate, we are joined by the Christmas Calves, Kent and Sane, both of whom have 0 strength. In vanilla, Sane is strictly superior comparatively, due to his speed being sufficient to double most enemies and his strength being higher. This is, however, not vanilla. In the absence of strength, Kent is the clear winner, despite his speed base and growth being only marginally higher than Sane's. As a result, I decided to funnel as many kills as possible into him, while ordering Sane to go and stand in Horny Jail, aka the corner. In a strange turn of events, due to already being able to double the enemies present here at base, Lyn is currently my best combat unit. This does make it easier to funnel kills into Kent, so at the end of the map, after we smacked the boss several times for 2 damage per hit, he hits level 4. Chapter 2, Sword of Spirits, sees me realise how much of a pain walls are going to be. Since it'll take Kent 3 turns to break through the wall, before then getting trapped by the enemy on the other side, I have Lyn walk around the mountains to gain some extra experience. Something that gets me is that even though my units all have 0 strength, the enemies really aren't doing much more damage per hit than we are, which is a true testament to how pathetic the Lyn Mode enemies are. At the end of this map, we receive the Manikasi, which is an 8 might, 20 crit weapon, making it the highest might weapon that we'll have for a hot second. Beyond having high might, it's also effective against cabs and armors. While the international release of FE7 only has double effectiveness, and so it is a worse weapon than it would be if I'd applied a triple effectiveness patch, this is still far better than not having an effective weapon at all. Due to not being an iron weapon though, I have not given it infinite durability, so we do have to be somewhat careful about when we use it. At the start of Chapter 3, Band of Mercenaries, we are joined by Florina, who has 0 strength. This means that she is condemned to only be used for fly utility. At the very least, she is able to visit the northern village, so that's something. Visiting the southern village results in the join of Will, who also has 0 strength. I'm initially almost excited to see him, since we previously had no means of dealing ranged damage, so having him present increases our potential damage output. Plus, an iron bow has 1 more might than an iron sword, I guess. A combination of excitement and the iron bow's infinite durability leads to me slowly chipping away at the stationary boss with Will, for 1 damage per hit and getting him to level 5. Once I finally let the boss die, Lyn says, "That's finally taken care of," to which I am inclined to agree. Chapter 4, in Occupation Shadow, sees Lynda's Legion protect Natalie, Dorcas' wife. Unfortunately, we actually can't check her strength, so we'll never know if she has more strength than everyone currently in my army. I move Lyn to recruit Dorcas, who has 0 strength. Upon getting him, I'm very enthusiastic, because Axis have the highest might of all the weapon types. Due to our inability to actually kill enemies in a timely fashion though, Dorcas and Lyn aren't able to reunite with the other units cramped into the spawn position, and so huddle up by the right pillar. Lyn unironically makes for a better choke point unit than Dorcas, due to having gotten a defense level 2 and not having weapon triangle disadvantage against all the mercs. Then Kent blocks off the room to Natalie and stalls. It goes without saying that we aren't able to get remotely close to the boss. In fact, we straight up can't damage the man with anything other than the Manikasi, and Lyn is a tad bit preoccupied. At any rate, we're able to hold out and so get to see another funny line where the boss, Karjiga, says on my units, "They're not human!" for only having 0 strength, which is well spoken. Even I have more than 0 strength. Though I didn't see it during the playthrough proper, I used to find out from Sirens that if you have male tactician and let Natalie die, Lyn says, "I wasn't strong enough, I couldn't protect Natalie. I'm sorry, I need to be alone. I failed her when she needed help most." Don't ask me why this apparently only gets said if you have a male tactician. Come Chapter 5, Beyond the Borders, we are joined by Sarah, who has 0 magic, and Urk, who has 0 magic. Sarah having 0 magic means she only has 2 less magic than usual, truly the magic base of all time. Does mean that should she eventually get to that point, her staff range will be puny, but so will everyone else's. Her ability to heal should still be helpful though, when we're seeing so many more rounds of combat than usual. Then while Urk looks like he might be very bad due to fire only having 5 might, it hits on res when enemies typically have more defense. This makes him the only non-Lyn unit capable of damaging the boss of his join map. Unfortunately, on the first attempt of this map, he gets crit by Merc and dies. Approaching the map more slowly ends up with Urk not dying, which is nice, and means that we can actually kill the boss without using precious Manikata usages. In yet another episode of Hilarious Lines, Sarah has a classic delusional moment and tells Lyn, "You're very strong, Lyn," leading to me laughing about her own voice call for a couple of minutes. Chapter 6, Blood of Pride, begins with the join of Wrath, who has 0 strength. Him having a horse and better stats in every respect compared to Will means he's just a better unit. It's a bit annoying that he doesn't join with an iron bow in his inventory, instead joining with a short bow, which is 1 might weaker. But you can just take Will's anyway, and, well, spoiler, even with the 6 might iron bow, man doesn't exactly do good damage for long. After visiting one of the villages, we recruit Matthew, who has 0 strength. This gives him basically the same combat as in vanilla, aka utterly terrible. Still, he has a lockpick on his person, letting us get both the Armor Slayer and the Angelic Robe, which is handy. The map itself is completely fine. For the most part, it's a Sane and Urk sweep, with other units helping out if needed. Getting the Angelic Robe in the previous chapter means that in the preps menu of Chapter 7, Siblings Abroad, I decided to give it to Urk. My logic behind this decision is that as a magical unit, Urk is frail, and so will benefit from the extra bulk in this game mode. I actually think it's the optimal move for beyond Lyn Mode as well. Of all the Lyn Mode units, Urk is the earliest joining magic user, and uses the higher might weapon type compared to Lucius, so any investment into him will hopefully pay off down the line. The opening cutscene sees us joined by Nils, who has 0 strength. This changes absolutely nothing about him. However, since everyone else has 0 strength, his refreshing is likely to be much less impactful than normal. Upon actually starting the map, we are joined by Lucius, who has 0 magic. While in vanilla, I consider him and Urk to be basically the same unit, due to Urk having the higher might weapon type and Lucius having higher magic. Here, he has 4 attack with lightning. It's bad. Still, this is actually enough to be able to do damage to all generic enemies on this map, even the mages. The shamans on this map have 5 defense and 2 res, meaning that the magical enemies are more annoying in every respect than the physical ones. They deal more damage to people, still take negligible damage from my units. It's a headache. This includes the boss, who is, of course, sitting on a throne. This decreases any hopes I have of unlocking the Gaiden chapter, which we will unlock if we kill him within 15 turns. Fortunately, we do have means of dealing damage to him. Iron Lances are able to deal 2 damage to him per hit, and the Manikati would be able to deal 3. We do eventually reach the boss with multiple units, with the rescue drop help of Florina. This gives me a funny moment where Lucius takes 5 turns to break down a 20 HP snag. Pain. But yeah, it turns out that even with 0 strength, we're able to kill the boss on turn 11. So, somehow we end up able to go to the Gaiden chapter, Chapter 7X, the Black Shadow. At this point, I save state because I'm not sure if we'll be able to clear it. This brings a deeply ironic moment where in the intro cutscene to this map, Lyn says, "Akra has agreed to attempt this recovery. I wouldn't be here if not for that. Akra believes we can do this. I'm sure that decision was not made lightly." Which, it was. We have the power of save states and rewind on our side. As yet another route map, there is little time pressure on this map other than the chest, which contains a hammer. While this is somewhat nice to have as a non-sword armor effective weapon, it's not that consequential, which is good, because it's blocked off by a wall, and so I have doubts that we'll be able to reach the chest before the thief does. This turns out to be very doable though, so the thief ends up retreating, meaning that there is one less enemy for us to rout. The rest of the map is uneventful for the most part. The only thing is that I get overly confident with Urk as a juggernaut, leading to me having to use save state and arrow dancing to rig a dodge to make sure he lives. The trend of completely fine maps continues with Chapter 8, Vortex of Strategy. This is not least because the ballista isn't threatening to anyone other than the flyer, who we're already not really using. Additionally, the Reaver weapons reversing and doubling the effect of the weapon triangle, including damage, means it's easier for us to damage enemies. Urk and Kent continue to do their thing, basically. More eventful is Chapter 9, A Grim Reunion, where we get Wallace, who has 0 strength. Wallace himself is of little consequence. What is the Night Crest on his person. Since this is Lyn hard mode, I'm not forced to use it on him, and can therefore use it on Kent instead, giving him a grand total of 1 strength, and also access to axes. I intend to train his axe rank so that he can use the hammer on Lundgren in the next chapter. I bring along Matthew for the extra fog vision for when it rolls in, and Florina to block off the fort in the mountains. We creep forward, making Kent use axes wherever convenient. Upon reaching the boss, Eagler, who I forgot to check the stats of before the fog appeared, I realised something. The only person capable of doing damage to his paladin is Lyn with the Manikati. This post-rationalises my decision to not just use her PRF willy-nilly. I decided to have Eagler break his javelin on Kent's face, so that he only has the hand axe left, meaning Lyn does 2 more damage per non-crit hit of the Manikati. Even so, as Eagler tells Lyn in their boss conversation, Lyn does indeed do a lot of drawing her sword. At last, we are at the final chapter, Chapter 10, The Distant Plains. In our final funny line of the run, Lyn begins this chapter by saying, "My friends, for one last time, lend me your strength." Ah yes, all 1 of the strength, possessed entirely by Kent. The amount of personal attack at our disposal does increase on this map though, as we receive an energy drop from the village. I guess the amount of strength we have distributed throughout the army doesn't strictly increase, since I use it on Urk. Though we don't need to buy anything, since we managed to get the hammer on 7X. I do like the armory here, since it sells all the armor effective weapons. Kent has now reached D axes, meaning that he is able to use the hammer on Lundgren for decent damage. It also turns out that with the energy drop and the Bible Thunder Tomes at 8 might, Urk is able to do exactly 2 damage per hit to him, Before the killing commences, I do have Lundgren kill off Wallace, so if I do end up continuing using this file, and we get Lloyd's version of Four-Fanged Offense, he will be promoted. And then though Kent with the hammer can deal more damage per hit than Urk with Thunder can, after all the work he's put in, I think Urk deserves the kill, so I feed it to him. Then I have Lyn seize to complete the map, and the run. So, is it possible to beat Lyn hard mode with 0 strength and magic, base and growth? Answer, yes. Yes it is. While I did give all the iron weapons and their tome equivalents infinite durability, that was for convenience since I didn't want to rig crits. It was really strange. Mages became both more useful on my side, since even the magical enemies had more defense than res, and more threatening on the enemies, since my own units generally had better defense. So, res, not the worst stat in this context, confirmed? In terms of the question I asked back at the intro, here's the tier list that I made after the end of this run. As reasoning, Lyn and Urk are definitely the best 2 units. Exact placement interchangeable since they're both needed. Regarding Urk, despite Fire only having 5 might and that being the same amount of might as an iron sword, magic is much better in this setting due to all of the enemies having equal or higher defense, in addition to weapon triangle disadvantage coming up less often. If I continue using this file, Urk I think is the best recipient of both the Angelic Robe and the Energy Ring due to the combination of his early join and hitting on res. It means there are many circumstances where he was the only person capable of damaging enemies other than Lyn with the Manikati. Even in this system with only double effectiveness, the Manikati being the only cav effective weapon in the setting means it is straight up necessary to complete the mode. Then, for once, we have a context where Kent is definitively better than Sane. Sane's speed is usually sufficient to double everything you want him to, making his superior strength an overwhelming point in his favour in standard unit comparisons. Here though, Kent being marginally faster means he's just better. Despite not being as necessary, his numerous contributions throughout the run makes him an MVP as well. Sane though is still not bad, since the speed thresholds even in Lyn hard mode are hilariously low, so he still contributed a bit. For utility units, Nils is very helpful for obvious reasons, as is Sarah since we're seeing more rounds of combat and thus taking more damage. Florina is mostly useful solely for flyer movement and rescue dropping at this point, and Matthew provides his value on the fog map and wherever chests are present. Then everyone else is one of Fine, Dorcas, arrives too late to do anything meaningful, Wallace, or uses a low might weapon type, Lucius and the bow users. But yeah, if you thought about potential placements for watching this run summary section, I'd be really interested to know how your guesses lined up. Thanks for watching this video, hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do consider letting me know in some form, whether it be through liking or commenting on the video, or subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. FE7 is painful for me, but if enough people enjoy this for some reason, then I'll stream my attempts to complete an Iron Man of Hector, or maybe Eliwood hard mode with this file, and later turn those into a compilation video too. In the meantime, if you want to keep up to date with my projects, including less formal streams of shorter runs like this one, or just want to talk Fire Emblem, please consider joining the community Discord below. There you can also download a patch of this, edited so it should work for the entirety of FE7, if you really despise yourself. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Hope to see you again next time. Until then, have a good one.